Hey everyone, welcome to the Slice of Healthcare podcast. I'm your host, Jared Taylor. Joining me today is Jim Hennessy, the president and CEO at e4health. Jim, how's it going?
Great to talk to you, Jared. Pleasure to be here.
I'm excited to chat. We're going to dive right in today, right into the content. So, first things first, excited to have you here. Big question to kick things off. Would love for you to start by explaining the fix, rip, or replace dilemma that many hospitals and health systems are facing as it relates to EHR systems.
Yeah, it's a huge issue. It's a huge question out there right now. And the situations are oftentimes so dependent upon what that customer's current state is, what their situation is right now to determine is it an easy decision or versus whether they can really go through that process. When we help and talk with organizations through that, we start with trying to understand what are those factors that are driving them to think about a change. Poor performance with the current system? Are there strategic factors that are driving the need for them to do a change? Is there operational dissatisfaction with this current system? Just technical gaps that they just can't think they get through. So a lot of those things that start with, we have to do something different. And then you can get into figuring out whether or not we can optimize what you currently have or go down that path of looking for replacement options.
And what are some of the common indicators that a hospital or health system might be reaching, when they're reaching that point of needing to make this critical decision? What I always like to say, what are those, the blinking lights in their head, right? That something a decision needs to be made.
Yeah, it's usually what we've seen is often driven by one or more of four different categories of those change events. One of the first ones would be at the strategic level. Are they seeing changes in the market where they're in a market where they're the outlier to everyone's on one platform, they're on a different age platform, and trying to figure out for their ability for their consumers in the market, for the physicians in the market, do they have to get on board and follow the herd in that market there? Other factors get into at the strategic level from an M&A perspective. Are they trying to fight for their independence, or are they in a position that they're about to be or likely a target of acquisition, in which case then the decision is going to be made for them. They're likely going to have the platform of the organization doing the acquisition is going to typically the first thing they do is extend those platforms to acquired entity. So they may not even have that decision. So really understanding where they are within that market at that strategic level is going to start off with them. And then the last one, the strategic piece that we often see is what's their market like in terms of consumer engagement and the expectations of the consumers in their area. Is that population one that's ready for digital engagement, really pushing on it, and they're just on a platform that can't support that? So those are just some of the things at the strategic level that drive them towards evaluating if they have to make a change.
In some cases, right, instead of making the switch, there's another step of optimizing the existing system. So I want to also be able to paint an alternative picture too, right? So before considering the fact that, okay, we need a full EHR replacement, what steps should they still, I know you mentioned it a little bit, but which steps should they take in relation to also optimizing their existing system, and maybe to the point where they say, okay, that'll work a little bit, but we need to go full on replacement?
Yeah, I think so. That if you start off with the perspective of there's not one of those strategic factors, one of those major things that's just saying, hey guys, skip right to replacement. A physician community that just says, I don't care what you tell me about trying to improve the current system. You need to go onto a different platform. If they're not being forced into those types of strategic or operational user-based pieces, can go through that assessment. The first thing they typically want to do is a practice that we often do, leveraging lean practices and techniques, which is kind of doing a current state, future state type of analysis. So understand what the current state is of your current system, of your current platforms, of your vendor relationship. Now then also start to analyze, where do you want to be? Where do you need to be within your market to understand where those gaps are? And that's determining then, once you have that identified, next step is to kind of work with your vendors, your current vendors that are out there, to see, are they going to be able to make that jump? And it really then drives into an assessment of your current vendor to determine whether or not it's worthwhile or the best option is to try to optimize. And when you start looking at the vendor from that perspective, particularly in today's market, with some of the major players that are out there and some of the changes happening, you're really looking into what's their commitment to the platform. There's some that are trying to get out of it, end of lifing some of those platforms. So you want to look at what you're on right now to find out, is that vendor committed to that platform? Another thing you're going to look at, particularly knowing a lot of change within the major EHR vendor market, is what's your relationship with them? Is that the partner? Is that your vendor partner that you can have confidence and can bring confidence to your user community, to your board, that this is the right organization for us to move forward for the next 5 to 10 years with? So there's a number of others that you get into, but it starts with that. I guess the last one that you'd look at is, how long have you been on that current platform? We've seen a number of them that, particularly after the spur of EHR implementations following the HITECH Act back in 2009, that really incentivized and really started the acceleration of the push that are out there. But still seeing some organizations that are still on platforms that predate that. That's likely going to put you towards a replace option. If it's since that time, you may be on a platform where there's enough commitment, enough direction on thinking about whether or not it's worth optimizing.
So how can hospitals ensure they're not overlooking critical needs when it comes to evaluating their current systems if they decide to replace?
I think it's really starting with that. The best way to do that, because there's not the same answer for every organization. It's really a matter of trying to inventory out where you are and what is your organization's mission, what's its focus, where's the business trying to go strategically, and then to see whether or not the platforms you're on can take you there, or that your vendors are committed to rolling out features, capabilities that are aligned with that. You're looking at them that for areas like interoperability, reporting, rev cycle performance, trying to get that performance there. If most organizations are looking at those things to see, it's easy to identify your gaps and deficiencies right now, but you really want to understand the roadmap of those organizations, of your vendor, to understand whether or not their roadmap is aligned with and going to be, if not getting dragged along, pulling you along, providing features and capabilities of where those organizations should be looking at based on what's happening, including the topic du jour right now, as far as how is automation and AI and data analytics, how are they providing capabilities and tools that are going to help you with that? And if you have confidence in that relationship, in where they're going, that their strategic direction aligns with what your organization needs, then you're typically going to lean into looking to optimize and work with your existing vendor.
So I'm sure you've seen your fair share of heard your fair share of horror stories when it comes to not properly implementing changes needed or making a full out replacement, right? Making that decision to actually do the full on replacement. So my question for you is, what are some of the most common pitfalls that hospitals tend to encounter during this EHR decision-making process?
Well, the decision making process and the early kickoff to it, one of the historical ones that's always been out there is setting the proper governance and proper expectations with the user community that's out there. Seen too many cases of where organizations make the decision to replace, say this is great, they pick a platform that has a ton of capabilities, and then the directive is, this is great, just make sure it works just like it used to in my current system. So now all of a sudden you're trying to re-engineer and customize a system that's able to be built for best practices for current state, and you're trying to retrofit old workflows, old processes into it because certain user constituencies are screaming the loudest, saying, don't disrupt me, which then ties to, if you're about to go through that change, or even if you're going to go through a major optimization piece, oftentimes it's not the technology that's the limiting factor. It's how well that organization's embracing that change and how well you're going into it, setting that right structure for that organizational change management. If you've got the proper governance, proper mindset, proper expectations for how the organization is going to change, how it's operationally going to change, then you're going to run less issues of blaming the systems and the technology and the vendor implementation for being the cause for it.
So where do you see the future of EHR systems heading? And then how should hospitals better prepare themselves for changes? You mentioned a little bit on what they should do in terms of the decision-making process, but let's talk about now the evolution and what the next few years look like. What should hospitals be made aware of and be staying on top of?
So right now, the biggest things that are out there right now, and one of the buzz terms that you hear a lot right now is making sure you have a quote intelligent EHR. The history of it for the EHRs and those were really those data collection things and to help drive availability of information for the clinicians to look at it and provide and document the care and then translate that into the billing. What they're looking more for now and where that intelligent piece comes into play is looking for interoperability and integration with other stakeholders within the healthcare ecosystem. It's not just a matter of just being connected and looking within your hospital environment. It's connectivity to different consumer entities, to the different pharmacies, to the different care providers outside of your direct network, and being able to connect to them. That data sharing and connectivity piece is going to be a huge piece of where the market's going right now. And you're seeing some of the major vendors really trying to focus on providing directionality, if not current capabilities, into that connection for care. And then the other piece that you're looking at is it's going to continue to drive towards how is that data being used? We're capturing all information in the care setting. We're managing that information in the rev cycle process. But how do you drive better, cheaper, faster within it through use of automation, through the use of AI? And all that is really dependent upon how well the quality of the data that you're managing and collecting through that EHR. The EHR becomes, in some cases, I've talked to some CIOs who are looking at the EHR itself, the UI, the user interface of the EHR will become less important because it's going to be more voice-based communication and capturing of that information, more listening to the ambient conversation. So it's going to be a difference in how the data is collected. So it may not be driven by the old things in the past where physicians are complaining about how many clicks they have to go through to put information in. It's going to change to be more of that voice-enabled capture of information, which really then drives towards how's that information being used. And if that data is not accurate, that's going to really has a potential of driving problems in how automation AI uses that information. So I think it's that data use piece and the connectivity.
So, Jim, what's kind of last question for you? And this will actually give you a moment to talk about e4health. Like, what's next for e4health that's really exciting you and the team?
Yeah, so for us, it's we've always focused as consulting firm, always helping organizations. Our focus has always been on empowering better health by helping them solve the complex challenges that they're dealing with, whether it's within data systems, revenue cycles, so they can focus on care. So right now, a lot of things that we're working with them on, if it's not organizations going through those implementations, it's setting a roadmap for how to leverage the information. So we do a lot of work right now on data quality, data integrity, and helping to put a roadmap for them on that. Because of, at the essence, it's the data that's going to be the most important that's in there. The other thing that we're helping them work do is set roadmaps as you continue to see the emergence of so many different players out there trying to drive how to leverage automation for that care and helping organizations both consult through that direction and then possibly get to a point of helping them implement and utilize that technology.
Love it. Well, Jim, I'm excited to continue the conversation and continue to stay up to date on what you're doing at E4Health. Really appreciate you. You know, we always love when we can hear kind of what's happening in the world of health systems, and particularly when it comes to selecting a EHR or optimizing your current one. So really appreciate you coming on, sharing some knowledge with us here today, and wish you and the team all the best of luck.
Fantastic. It's been a pleasure. Thanks, Jared.